Hello, my name is Chris Lemaire. I'm a programmer at the American Cinematheque, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual Q&A for the amazing film One Night in Miami. Tonight, we're thrilled to have Leslie Odom Jr. joining us, who is nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor in a Supporting Role and Best Original Song. Our moderator is Jenelle Riley, who is a writer and editor at Variety. Before I turn it over to her, I just want to send a thank you to Amazon Studios for making this event possible, and also send a big thank you to all our members joining us tonight for their continued support. So without further ado, let's welcome Leslie and Jenelle. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this American Cinematheque Q&A with One Night in Miami. Today's guest is an Emmy nominee, a Tony Award winner, a Grammy Award winner, and now a 2-time Academy Award nominee. I am so pleased and honestly a little bit intimidated to welcome Leslie Odom Jr.
You ain't intimidated, girl. All the amazing people you get to talk to. Come on.
Yeah, but my mom doesn't care about any of those. She's here tonight because you're here. So
What's up, mama?
Whenever I have someone as accomplished as you are, I actually like to go back to the beginning and ask, what was your first job in this business? The first time you felt you could call yourself a professional singer or actor?
Well, the first time I called myself a professional was when I got my equity card in a Broadway show. I went to an open call for a show called Rent, which my favorite quote about art and artists is that an artist spends their entire life trying to get back to the place where their hearts first opened up. And Rent was the show that opened up my heart. And so I went to the audition. I was 16 years old when I went to that audition. Really, Jenelle, I wasn't thinking that I was going to get the show. I thought I kept getting these callbacks, and I honestly thought that at the end of some sort of process, my picture and resume would go inside a filing cabinet. And like the best I could hope for was that someday when I became an adult, they would remember me and they would go back through that filing cabinet and they're like, oh, let's call that kid. So you could have knocked me over with a feather when I, at the end of the summer, I got a call to come join the Broadway company. So from that was the first time I could call myself a professional actor.
I mean, and you were 17, I believe, making your Broadway debut.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, this question is designed to make people feel like we all had humble beginnings doing commercials or background work, but you made your Broadway debut at 17.
Well, the thing is, have you ever read that book, The Alchemist?
I have actually,
Yeah.
Pablo Coelho. Yeah.
So, there's that it's been a while since I read it, but the most sort of salient lesson that I had from that book was he talks about, that early success that you have, like that it's confirmation from the universe that you are on the right path. The challenges come later, but I know it's what we call beginner's luck. That's what that was. It was a big job, but all it really was beginner's luck. I think it was like, when I'm talking to young people, I'm saying, there was no, I wasn't jaded. I was so happy to be there. I was malleable, agreeable. Like, those things are really attractive. I imagine at 17 years old, it was like, who wouldn't want to hire that kid? And what happens is, I think over the years, we have our hearts broken, we get jaded, things get more difficult. And so really it's about trying to remember what that 17-year-old, what was that magic that he had? What was that thing that, where he just kind of waltzed into his first opportunity? We're really trying not to lose that, I think.
But you also had to be pretty good. I mean, to book Rent at age 16, 17, that's pretty amazing.
I think, I had been another thing that, when I'm talking to young people, I don't know how many young people are watching of the 123. This will help your mom somehow.
I was gonna say that's my mom's book club.
But the school play, the school play, the community theater thing, it was it lit me up. It lit me up. And so I was just walking toward the thing that lit me up from the inside. I think that you can't go wrong when you're doing that. And so, yeah, I think that after, 4 or 5 years of having taken some dance classes and having done some things, I showed up at that audition and I was more prepared than I knew. I was more prepared than I intended to be. I wasn't taking those classes for some grand ambition, but yeah, I showed up and I was like, oh yeah, I'm picking this up and I'm keeping up. Who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know.
I'm dying to know what school plays you did. I was always cast as the old lady and had to like draw the makeup lines on. Were you doing musicals in high school?
I did. I don't remember a ton of them. I know I did, as far as the plays, I remember I did The Miracle Worker. I was the slave boy in The Miracle Worker. Percy is his name. And then we did 12 Angry Men, I think a couple years later, and I was, juror number whatever. Super talented. It was boys and girls. So it was 12 Angry Jurors. And there
The
was
same thing.
so do you know Monica Henderson, the writer Monica Henderson?
I don't actually.
Oh, she's a television writer now, but Monica was the star of high school, and she ended up going to Harvard. Brilliant, she writes for TV now, but I never let Monica forget how like I would have given Monica a Tony Award in middle school. I just thought she was so good. Bye Bye Birdie, I played Conrad Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh, that's a great role. So you've played iconic singers before. So when One Night in Miami came your way and they wanted you to play Sam Cooke, you were ready.
Yeah, no, it's like Conrad Birdie. I remember this. Yeah.
Now, I believe you were very familiar with Sam Cooke when this project found its way to you. He had a big impact in your life.
Yeah, I kind of think of singing as an oral tradition. It's passed down from generation to generation. You learn the technique, you learn the ways of storytelling and craft from the singers ahead of you. I don't know if you know about this thing, Versus, that's happening in the pandemic, where they'll pit two singers or two acts kind of against each other online, and everybody shows up, and you're really just celebrating the catalogs of these people. And yesterday was Earth, Wind, and Fire versus the Isley Brothers. So how much have we learned about R&B and soul music from these catalogs? So anyway, Sam was one of my teachers, in many ways. And I'm not the only one, he really is responsible for several generations of singers. He's the blueprint really for how to build a bridge for yourself from the Black church to the popular music space. Sam invented that bridge.
Yeah, he was the first, really, wasn't he? The film is written by your fellow Academy Award nominee, Kemp Powers, based on his play, and directed by the magnificent Regina King. I can't believe it's her feature directorial debut. It is so assured. It's so good. How were you initially approached about the project? Because she said she had to chase you a little.
Yeah. I was just getting most of the opportunities that most of the opportunities in this town I am chasing. I'm actively chasing, and I'm being actively rebuffed. People are like, nah, no thanks. But every now and again, somebody is interested in me for something. And so yeah, this was one of those. I got a kind of email or whatever from my team saying that they were interested in me for this thing. And I knew about the play because I knew about Kemp's play, which I would have done the play, no question. What we're gonna do a run of this play in Denver. We're gonna do a run of this play in Philadelphia and Cleveland or something like that. Great. If we're really successful, maybe 10,000 people will see me in this play. But I'll learn and I'll work on my chops a little bit. Like something like that would be great. But to make a film of it, to make a film where half of the characters, in the main cast are, have already been played by iconic figures themselves. We've got Denzel's, Malcolm X, and Will Smith's. Oscar nominated Ali, of course. So it just didn't seem wise. It just felt like I should steer clear of that. That could turn out, not so great.
And it'll be immortalized on film where anyone can go to Amazon and watch it anytime.
That's right. It just felt like, yeah, it felt like high stakes. And I was really interested. Film is such a public way to learn.
Mm.
It's so public. I admire and envy the people, River Phoenix and who's this girl, the Queen's Gambit young
Oh,
woman,
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Taylor Joy. There are those people. There are those some of the who Ethan Hawke was in the, or Denzel, quite frankly. They're the people that kind of like from the first glimpse we get of them on film, they just really understand it. They understand the medium and they're beautiful to look at. And it's a thing, that wasn't, that wasn't my story. I mean, as I've got the story of the rent thing, I got right away, but film um, is taking some doing. I have to, really had to understand um, how to make good use of myself in this space. So, um, yeah, I was I was a little nervous. I wanted to make sure that I think I told my agent something like, the next films that I do, I want them to be, um, if possible, I want them to be those things that only I should do. That people are like, only that guy should have told that story. I don't want to play, a bunch of nice husbands or something. You know what I mean? Just like the roles that any guy could do. I want to sort of work on the thing, a specialty of some sort. Anyway, and I'm running away from Sam Cooke. So when my agents called me, when my agent and my manager called me to tell me I was making a mistake, passing on this opportunity, they said, we have to say we disagree with you. We feel like this is one of those roles that you said. This is something that you're at least on a very short list of people that should be telling this story. So they believed in me, and I had to find a way to believe in myself.
Wow. And also, you don't say no to Regina King. I'm sorry.
You don't.
I mean, you've obviously played real people before, from Aaron Burr to William Still in Harriet. But people today still remember what Sam Cooke looked and sounded like. Was it nice to have this footage and research to draw on, or does that just make it more intimidating?
That made it a little more intimidating for me. There was something about with Burr, no one was going to walk into that theater and expect me to walk and talk and sound like Burr. They were going to take a leap of the imagination as soon before I even said my first line. They knew this was gonna be symbolic in some way. It was gonna be about the spirit of these people, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, but with Sam, I think the four of us guys in that room, we knew that on some level this was going to be about verisimilitude. This was going to be about how close we could come, how it was going to be about the illusion. Could we fool you? Could we trick you? Because it certainly would be more impactful if somewhere along the way you could feel like you were watching the real guys, if you could get lost in it. So that was daunting. But yeah, as you say, I certainly had um my marching orders. I had so much music. I had the video. There's not a ton of video clips, but there's enough. There's not a ton of audio of him speaking, but there's enough for me to build build off of.
We actually have a question from Lydia Butler, who wants to know if, in general, do you think it's more challenging to play a real person or a completely fictional person?
More challenging. They're probably equally challenging, because when it is a character of invention, it has to be, um, you don't want to just keep playing versions of yourself, and so you have to find those, um, the ways that are specific to this person. And you have to write a biography for this person in a lot of ways, in the same way that I had to learn Sam's biography. You have to write that for a character you're inventing. So I think they both have similar challenges. But sitting here today, playing Sam Cooke was the most challenging thing I've ever done.
Really?
So
Really?
yeah, it compares to nothing.
More so than 8 shows a week of a 3-hour show that actually probably has 300 pages, but you're just doing it really fast?
Yeah, but I also had, before there was ever an audience that looked at that, I had already been doing it for like a year and a half.
Mm.
I had so much time to prepare. So, before we ever had, and before a Broadway audience, I had been doing it, I think, almost like 2 years by then. Before we, opened on Broadway, I had been in development. I had been thinking about Burr and, practicing for 2 years. Sam was, yeah, I didn't have 2 years, but if I had 2 years, I would have been a lot less nervous. I'll tell you that. If Regina had called me and said, "Will you play Sam Cooke for me in 2 years?" my answer would have been hands down yes.
Really?
Yes. That gives me enough time to prepare. Almost.
It's funny you say that, you weren't expected to look or sound like Aaron Burr, because it's very jarring for me now when I do see pictures of Aaron Burr that he doesn't look like you. Because that's what I think in my mind.
I know. Yeah, we did. It did that thing. Like the illusion really became real for people,
Mhm.
for everybody, like that. It's magic. It's a magic trick. The fact that Daveed Diggs is Thomas Jefferson now for people, and Philippa Sue is Eliza Hamilton. It's incredible. But it's
Yeah,
the power of the theater. It's the power of the theater and the power of our imaginations. I think, I really do. I think that there are children and cousins of Hamilton all around us in
mhm.
the, in pop culture today. You look at, what is it? It's Emma on Apple, right? Is or not
Yeah. Oh, Emily Dickinson.
Emily Dickinson on
Yeah.
Apple, and the way that they cast that. Bridgerton feels like there's like a cousin of that. It reminded people um, that we didn't have to be slavish
Mhm.
to these stories of the past, that we could bend and twist and tell stories. We could tell stories that we needed to hear right now. um and we could take creative license. Anyway, I think Hamilton, there are ripples that we see all throughout the business.
Absolutely. And you talked about the research you put into Sam Cooke. Was there anything you learned that actually surprised you or caught you off guard?
um yeah, I think that our screenwriter Kemp, I hope my wine is okay. It's wine o'clock, right?
Right, right.
Um,
You you deserved it. For people who don't know, you had a second child recently, so it's so nice of you to join us when I'm sure you have your hands full.
because yeah, he's I think 9 days old today. Um, but that forgive me. Would you ask me? You asked me.
Oh, have you learned anything in your
Oh
research that
yes,
hard? Yeah.
Kemp Powers, our brilliant Oscar-nominated screenwriter, started his career as a journalist, and so these men were so well researched. And so while there is no passage in the script that is lifted verbatim from something that they actually said in life, um, the men are so well researched that it feels like it is. It feels like this is something Malcolm would say because it is something Malcolm would say. It is something Sam would say. So, really, it's that other side of him. My dad told me this story when I was a kid. We were at a park and there was a swan gracefully gliding across the top of the water. And my dad said, "See that swan?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "See how graceful it is?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Underneath the water, that swan is like this,
Yeah.
you know?" And he kind of left it at that. I never forgot it. But that's Sam. you know, it is grace on its face, on his face, but underneath that exterior is grit and and chutzpah and anger and some rage and some he wasn't nothing to mess with, and that just wasn't you weren't going to see that side of him on Johnny Carson. You weren't going to see that side of him um, with Dick Clark. So it's in Kemp's script for a reason. It's well researched. I mean, that was who that when you hear his friends talk, when you hear people who were close to him talk, that's what they talk about the most. Is that Sam, he was a short fuse. He let you know exactly what he wanted. He was so I thought like one of the best ways I could honor him in this film was to honor that side of him, was to make him uh, you know, not easy, was to show a little bit of that, what was happening underneath the water.
Sort of to that end, we have a question from Michael O'Shea. All the characters in One Night in Miami are hit hard by racism, yours very publicly in the scenes at the club, and it's painful to watch. Did you draw on any personal experiences for this role?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I think that at least one of the most powerful and daring things that Kemp is doing in this script. I hope I can tell this story right. So in the Toni Morrison documentary, she talks about uh, um, the white gaze,
Mm.
and she talks about how she never she very specifically and consciously in her career um, was not writing with the white gaze ever present. She said she wanted her works read and translated all over the world, and discussed, but that she was talking to um, a very specific audience, Black people, namely, and that there weren't a whole lot of writers that were doing that when Toni Morrison was writing. She said even the famous, this is Toni now, she's saying even the famous writers that she admired, Richard Wright and James Baldwin, she said she could feel that they were not talking to her, because if they were talking to her, there were things that they were explaining that they wouldn't have to explain if they were talking to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
The white gaze. So I thought what was really daring and subversive about Kemp's script was that kind of unexplicitly, it was about code switching.
Mm.
Because it was about the way we were going to talk in this hotel room when no one else was watching. Could we, it was about how real, how raw, who were those men when when the white gaze wasn't present,
Mm-hmm.
when they weren't, when they were home, when they were amongst family and friends. We don't have any footage of Sam Cooke in that arena. So that was a leap of the imagination in that. And that's what was daring about Kemp's script, I thought.
Well, he's taking literally and figuratively these private conversations and showing it to the public.
Yeah. And so that, to answer the question, that's what I got to use. I understand that well. I'm doing it right now. And not because of it isn't, this is not a version of myself that is untrue, but I am aware that I'm aware of the company that I'm in mixed company. And so there's a way that I would like to be welcoming, and I would like to, there are things that I'm willing to explain. I'll tell that Toni Morrison story. There are things that because I want to be understood, and I want to be valued and all that stuff, accepted and all that stuff. but there's a different, I understand code switching.
Hmm. I'm actually curious. I don't know if code switching was a term when One Night in Miami took place. It feels fairly recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like, did they call it something else then, or did it just not have a name?
I
It
don't
was
even
just
know if it had,
understood.
yeah, I don't know if it had a name. I don't know if it had a name. Sam was a master at it because, again, more explaining, but there's a very different thing between what Sam is doing and what some might call, cooning or Uncle Tomming, or, something that is sort of, somebody that is willing to change who they are or kowtow for white acceptance or white adjacency. That's not what Brother Sam is doing. Sam is uh, totally himself, and and is audacious and is bold. Sam, owns his own masters and has his own record label, and like is his own man, but at the same time uh, understands that in his day there was a show he needed to do at the Copacabana, and it took him a couple of tries to understand that show, and a very different show that he could do at the Harlem Square in
Mhm.
1963. So I knew that for my Sam in this play, in this movie, excuse me, that Sam live at the Harlem Square was going to serve me well for that room. This
Mhm.
wasn't Sam at the Copa. This was not going to be Sam on Johnny Carson on Ed Sullivan, or, this was Sam at the Harlem Square.
He's probably not going to sing Tammy there.
No, he's not going to sing Sam.
I mean, obviously, we have to talk about this amazing SAG Ensemble nominated cast. You have such amazing chemistry with all of the actors. Not surprising that you have chemistry with Nicolette Robinson, who plays your wife and is your wife, but Aldous Hodge and Kingsley Benadir and Eli Gorey. You're trapped in a room. I shouldn't say trapped, but you're in a room with them for long shooting periods. There's no way to define chemistry, but did you know each other at all, or did it just develop naturally?
Not at all. I think that chemistry, um, you know, yeah, it is hard to define. I mean, we were put together. Regina placed us together, and I think some of that is very conscious and happens very purposefully, and some of it is a blessing. Because if you could manufacture it, if you could do it every time out, you would. Then every movie would be this special, but they're not. So um, there was some of it that was just a lucky thing, very special thing. We all had similar, I think at the end of the day, where we might differ in process, or where we might differ in experience, we all came from different parts of the world and from different training backgrounds and all that stuff. But there was we were clear on mission, we were clear on mission. Um, and we agreed on it. We agreed on why we were there, and so nothing was going to get in the way of why we were there. We were there to honor the legacies of those men, and we were there to serve Regina's vision. That was it. And everybody, we all just fell in line behind that. They're good guys, they're good guys, and so we definitely pushed one another's boundaries in those scenes, but that's as Kingsley was hard on me, but that's a great gift of an actor, you know when an actor, like, checks you, when an actor really, uh kind of, yeah, just he didn't hold anything back, and because of that, it raised the level of everyone in the room. It raised the bar for everybody.
We actually had a question about filming from Gavin. Wants to know if claustrophobia was discussed much on the set. With 4 main actors, 4 huge personas, and such a small room and a whole production crew, I can imagine the shooting space felt very tight to work within.
Yes, it did. And you use that. That's great stuff. That's great for film. You know, if as you can imagine, if in a Tennessee Williams play, if the oppressive heat is one of the obstacles, to feel that it's only going to aid you. That's gas, that's fuel for you. So yes, of course, there were days where all you wanted to do was to be out of that hotel room, by God, but that you can use that.
Mhm.
I mean, don't let that go. Don't let that, who is it that says, I think it was Holly Hunter. It says, she heard from some great acting teacher that, yeah, anything you're feeling on a film set, if you're hungry, if you're frustrated that, that the shot's taking too long, it's like, don't waste any of that. Like
Right.
that, as soon as Regina says action, use that to kickstart you. That's your gas. So the answer is yes. And it was very useful. The claustrophobia was very useful.
Sort of piggybacking on that, we have a question from, I think it's Gemelina. I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. While playing a strong and talented man in a small space for most of the movie with other strong and talented men, how did a female director either help keep the testosterone tank high enough to be realistic, but also balance it out so it didn't become too much?
Yeah. Uh, you know, we were four brothers that respected the divine feminine.
Mm.
We respected that our leader was a woman. And so I've been in there's that wouldn't necessarily happen with four different actors. Like there's some men that maybe have a problem with that. We were not the four men that had a problem with that. Um, and Regina is, um, yeah, she's just in touch with all the different sides, myriad sides of herself. You see it in her work, you know. Um, so there was like, I say, there's a part of Regina that's one of the guys too. You know what I mean? That's just who she is. She can put on a gown and do that whole thing, but she can also take that gown off and have a drink and like, do other things too. So yeah, there was a part of me as an actor working for her. I felt like the uh, direction that she gave me was both from the inside and from the outside. When she gave me a thought, it was like her perspective. She was giving me the thought as like, hey, I'm watching it and this is what it looks like. So I don't know what it feels like, but I'm telling you, this is what it looks like. And then as she would help me find maybe another path, she was doing it as Sam, like her notes from me for Sam Cooke, or for Leslie, for me as Sam Cooke, she was acting it too. So I got to also like, I got the benefit of the expertise of one of the great actresses of our time, too. She was like, every now and again, Regina had uh, a joke for me, that just wouldn't have occurred to me. Or, she would send me down a more truthful path, a more entertaining path.
We have a question from Delissa. The book you wrote, they were particularly struck by your story about Billy Porter's advice to fail spectacularly. Given your recent successes, how does that apply to you as you go forward? And congratulations on the birth of your son.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I every I never let Billy, you know, I never let him forget. I thank him constantly. I thank him often, because he helped me break a ceiling that I built for myself. you know, he just helped me push. So yeah, a moment like A Change Is Gonna Come, or Chain Gang, or any of those, you know, like the scenes where we really had to let it fly emotionally with Kingsley. I have access to all of that now. I have access to those colors be, only because of Billy. You know, I mean, the colors were within me, but I was way too scared to access them. And yeah, you know, she knows the story in the book. But yeah, Billy, working, he was my director, and working together with him on a show in Philadelphia. He had, you know, he really just, he pushed me past the ways in which I was holding myself back. And so now I tell him, I mean, yeah, anyway, I describe it kind of like 1 through 10, the emotions, you know, 1 through 10. I was very comfortable with about, you know, 1 being kind of, you know, emotionless, and 10 being, you know, as you can imagine. And I was really comfortable with notes like 1 through 6, 1 through 6.5. 7, 8, 9, 10 was, it was a little scary for me. It was a little outsized. I didn't know if I'd be able to come back. I didn't have control over 7, 8, 9, 10. And so I want to do a controlled thing. I want to present the thing that you know, that I've made in my bedroom. And Billy was like, you know, we're not interested in that. So now, anyway, being used to that, you know, you watch that Hamilton thing on Disney, you know, I can see it in myself. I'm looking like, within the first 5 minutes, can I get to 10? You know, there would have been nothing left to do for someone less to do. You know, like I'm looking to like get there as fast as possible because I love that place now. It's free, and it's fun. You know, I love not knowing what's gonna happen, you know, once I get to that scary place now. But it was it took some doing, and I thank him for that. He didn't give up on me. I'm glad.
By the way, I fight with every fiber of my being to not ask you to sing on these things, and you just finally did it.
Sing for you anytime.
And I didn't even have to ask. Actually, there's quite a few people asking about performing the songs in the movie and what it was like to, you know, film them live with an audience there.
Um, you know, Chain Gang was such an interesting one. Chain Gang, I'm grateful to Regina and Tarek, our editor, for really sewing that together, knitting that thing together and making it something special and worth seeing. But Chain Gang was not working for the first 5, 6 hours of the day. It was not working. And after lunch, I told Regina at lunch, I was like, I know what I have to do. And again, it was scary, but you know what was required on that day? I realized I had 200, 250 scene partners, those extras and those background artists. And somebody can get on a bullhorn and give them the direction. And now you got, you know, somebody can do that, but it needed more than that. We needed to get to know each other, you know, and that's a scary thing because I need, you know, you guys have to help me complete the illusion. If I'm up here and I say I'm Sam Cooke and you guys don't believe it, I ain't Sam Cooke. You know, you guys make me Sam Cooke. You endow me with that power, you know? And so we had to, after lunch, we started to talk. We just started, I started with the front row. I just started to get to know who was there. And I started to ask certain things of them. Hey, would you help me with this thing? So when I get to this moment, I'm gonna look at you here. And, you know, we just built it. And we got it, you know, about, you know, probably an hour or so after lunch, there was this one take that we did where they all clapped. And nobody told them to do that. But that was when I knew, you know, because that we had done it, you know what I mean? Like it had worked, and we had the rest of the day to go. But it took a while to find that, you know, Kingsley and Aldous and Eli and I, we'd had all those hours in the hotel room to gel and to find our thing and to become an ensemble. Me and these people, we met each other, and in minutes, we have to do this really, really important story beat that's not going to happen in broad strokes. It really kind of happens moment by moment. So it was, I learned a lot on that day. I learned, yeah, it was a special moment. Anyway.
It's such an iconic moment. It surprises me that there was ever a time it didn't work.
It was rough. Those first few hours was rough. Once we found it, though, we found it. Once we were on the ride together. But can you imagine? It's like I'm up here all by myself. Literally, the band leaves. they're booing. It was daunting. But man, I'm grateful to them because they allowed me to believe in myself that day. They made me Sam Cooke on that day.
Should have bribed them with tickets to Hamilton. You probably can't get them, actually.
I should have.
In addition to being nominated for Best Supporting Actor, you're nominated for Best Song, Speak Now, with Sam Ashworth. Was this a package deal? Did they ask you to play Sam Cooke and write a song for the film? Once they realized you were going to do it, they made you pull some moonlighting?
It wasn't quite a package deal. I don't remember when. It was early, like in shooting, but I think they just like came to me on set one day and asked me to do it, which I was happy to do.
Yeah, no, it's a great song. That's really exciting. And finally, we have a question from Jane Edwards. Replaying your adapted singing of Wait For It after the election really, really helped to alleviate the prolonged anxiety of those several days waiting for the votes to be tallied. Thank you so much for that. How did that video come about?
Oh, Amy Schumer called me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was Amy's idea. And and I think I had texted a friend of mine who I knew worked with Colbert. And I said, because I knew Colbert was going to do election night results, and not, it just really occurred to me. I was like, we have to really make sure that people know on election night, this is not going to be like the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to know on that night. And so we need smart coverage. That was it was like I knew a good friend of mine was working with Colbert. She could make sure that was heard maybe. And she was like, I know, we're on it. And she also was friends with Amy. So I think it came about in that way, but Amy called and had that idea. And I was happy to do it because, like I said, I knew it was going to be, whatever way the results went, I knew that this was going to be a time, because of the historic mail-in vote. My parents, among them, Nicolette and I, also weren't going to the polls. My parents were in Pennsylvania. It's like, in Philadelphia, actually. So, we knew that, like, in some of these places, they've made it so they can't even start counting the vote until the polls close. So we're not going to know anything. There could be millions and millions of mail-in ballots, and we just have to wait. So anyway, I was happy that Hamilton, once again, that Lin-Manuel's brilliant and beautiful score of Hamilton could once again be used to minister and to offer some I don't know, some like, like a balm in a really troubled time. They're doing it again with the vaccine, my shot, I've seen lots of my shots with it. So, Hamilton it's like whatever it can be used for, is all right with me.
Oh, so many purposes, so many memes. It's amazing. Well, again, I want to congratulate you on a beautiful performance. It's such a wonderful film. I cannot wait to see what you do next. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Well, actually, more people came in. Usually you see people drop off. And I'm just going to throw things back to Chris, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jenelle. Thank you, guys.
This was great. Thank you so much, Leslie, Jenelle. We really loved diving into this beautiful movie. We love it so much. And but yeah, thank you for your time, and thank you to our wonderful audience for tuning in and sending in some amazing questions. I'm so glad Jenelle got to get to so many of them.